how to create an interactive dashboard in Excel step by step from scratch. We're gonna start with a data set, and then we're gonna transform the data set into a table in Excel, because a table has a lot of benefits when we are creating a dashboard. And then we can move on to the pivot tables. The pivot table is a tool in Excel that can help us create analysis easily and faster than using functions. And from the pivot tables, we can move on to the dashboard in Excel, where we can properly analyze the data and the informations that we have in the data set. And in this particular dashboard that I have here, we can see many different informations. We have here the cards with each one of the products that I sold in this report and with the average margin. And I also have two bar charts here in Excel that show the largest value in the top, the smallest one in the bottom. And that way I can compare informations against each other. Let's say the total sold and my criterion is the product. And in the second chart, the total sold again, but this time the condition is the state. The third and fourth chart that I have is area chart, where I can see the total sold per month and also the average margin per month, where I can see if there is or not a correlation between those values, the total sold and the average margin. So this is what we're gonna do here in Excel step by step from scratch. I really hope this video can help you out on how to create a dashboard in Excel, and of course to help you into a presentation or into a report. So let's find out how can we create this interactive and dynamic dashboard here in Excel. Let's go. In order to create the dashboard here in Excel, the first step is to have a data set. And it doesn't matter what type of data set you want to use. You can use your own spreadsheet, but anyways, if you want to download this Excel file, you can just click in the link in the description down below, 100% free. That way you can follow with me this step by step using the same data as I'm using here. But anyhow, this data set here is a sales report with a lot of different informations that we're gonna see later. But as we already have the data set, the first step is done. Now the second step is to transform this data set into a table in Excel. So why is it important to transform the data into a table? So it means that I always need to use a table in Excel when I want to create a dashboard? No, you can create a dashboard in Excel without using a table, but a table has a lot of benefits that I'm gonna show you here. So let's transform the data set into a table. Basically, I just need to click in anywhere within the data, and then I go to Insert and then Table. With this new window that's gonna pop up for me, I just need to make sure and be mindful to check this option here. My table has headers because of course it has. And then I'm gonna click OK and we're done. So this is the second step, to transform the data into a table itself. And if you go, let's say the first benefit, you can go to Table Design, click here in this down arrow, and you can see a lot of different layouts and designs that you can choose. So this is a benefit to use a table. Another benefit, let's say I have here 2,747 different rows with informations. I want to add a new row, or one more, and on and on. If I add new informations here, all those new informations is going to automatically be appended to my table. And that way it's much easier to update the dashboard. Now the third step is to create the pivot tables. The pivot tables are a tool here in Excel that are really good to automate tasks and to make analysis. So let's say I ask you this question: what is the total sold? Or what is the total price? Okay, it's the same thing here in this report. What is the total price? You can take the column H and add up all those values, and that way you're gonna have the total sold. Okay, it's a simple task to complete, let's say. But if I make something more specific, such as what is the total price, what is the total sold per state? Now we have something more complex that requires maybe more dexterity to solve this question. We can use formulas and functions, but the pivot table can help us in a faster way doing this analysis. And let's say, what is the total price per state per brand? Now it requires even more dexterity. So I think it's very important to use the pivot tables in Excel because this can help us a lot, and it can actually automate tasks like when we are making analysis here in Excel. So let's create the first pivot table. You just need to click within, inside the data, and then you go to Insert and then Pivot Table. Just click here. With this new window that's gonna pop up, you just need to click OK. And that's it. So now we have a new sheet, and in this sheet we have the pivot table, but I just want to make some changes here. I want to take this sheet 1 click, hold, and drag to the right to just reorganize the displacement of my sheets that I have. Click, hold, and drag to the right. Okay. Now again, right click on this sheet, and then I go to rename. Here I'm gonna input pivot table. Or you can use any different name that you want to use here. To the left, we have the pivot table itself, where we can see the analysis that we're gonna make here. To the right, we can see all the fields of the pivot table, or in other words, we can see all the columns that we have in the table, such as order ID, date, store, product, and on and on. Here down below underneath, we have filters, rows, columns, and values. We have 4 different fields that we can basically take any information above, click, hold, and drag, and drop in any one of those different fields. So as I asked you before, what is, let's say, the total sold? We can easily answer this question. So I can take here maybe the total price, click, hold, and drag, and drop on the values like this. Now I'm gonna have a sum, an addition of the total price. And if I check here in my pivot table, now I have the total sold. Simple as that. And if I want to make it more specific, I can do so. I can create, or I can transform each one of the rows into a different product. And that way I'm gonna have, let's say, more specificity. So let's take here the product, click, hold, and drag and drop into the rows like this. Now each one of the rows are a different product. Instead of using rows, I can also use columns. And what is the difference? The name is the difference. So instead of using the rows, we can use the columns. So if I choose here columns, each one of the columns are going to be a different product, but I'm gonna keep the rows. I think it's easier to understand the data. Now that we already created the first pivot table, let's just make a couple of different changes here, but just minor changes that are select all those values that I have, and then go to home. As we are talking about currency, I think it's very important to transform the data and input the $sign and format as dollar. Okay, so let me click here the $sign like this, and as you can see, now all those values are in a better format. Maybe the second thing that I want to transform here is right click in the pivot table and go to pivot table options. I want to go to total and filters. Here I need to uncheck or unmark those first grand totals options. So unmark here and also here. Okay, now let's go back to layout and format, and I also want to uncheck the auto fill columns width on update. Click OK, and yeah, that's it. And now to create the second pivot table, we can do again the previous steps that we did, that is insert, pivot table, and on. But I think it's easier to select everything here, Ctrl+C to copy, and then maybe 2 rows underneath, Ctrl+V to paste. Now we have a new pivot table, but instead of using exactly the same data, I think it's making no sense. We can change something here. I want to keep the products, but instead of have the sum of the price, maybe I think it's important to have the average of the margin. So let's take here, instead of using the sum of the total price, I'm gonna click in this option and remove field. Now as you can see, the information was read off. Let's now select here maybe margin. It's here, click, hold, and drag and drop here in the values. And now I'm having a sum of the margin. But instead of using a sum, I think it's better to use an average. Let's click here, this option, and go to value field settings. And I can choose here sum, count, max, min, and average. I'm gonna click average. Okay, and as you can see, now instead of having an addition, I have an average. I want to select all those values and go to home tab and change the format, because it's not about currency anymore, it's about percentage. So I want to stick with this option right here. Okay, percentage. Click here, and yeah, it's much better, but I think we can improve it a little bit more. Maybe we can add a couple of decimal places to add more preciseness into the number. I'm gonna click in this option right here, 1, 2. 2 because I want to add 2 decimal places. Now I have all the items with the average margin. Very important, click in the flop disk, in the diskette, just to save the spreadsheet. Imagine if you are following with me this tutorial and then, let's say, you close Excel without saving. I think it's a bad idea. So just click to save your Excel file. As we already have 2 different analyses, I want to create the third one. That is, can be the states, and each one of the states in each one of the rows, and the total sold per state. So let me take here maybe the first one, the first pivot table again, Control C to copy everything, and then 2 rows as space, and then Control V to paste everything. Now instead of using as the rows the names of the products, let me click in this field, in this option, and read it off, remove field. I'm gonna stick with state, and I want to have an addition of the total price that I already got here. So yeah, we're done. So this is the third analysis that we did here. The fourth one can be maybe, let's take again here this pivot table, Control C, and then let's skip 3, 4 row columns, and then maybe in the fourth one, column F, Control V. Here I want to see, let's read it off, the product, each one of the months that we have. So in order to have the months, I need to take the date. So take the date, click, hold, and drag, and drop here in the rows. And as you can see, Excel is very clever because it's, let's say, it's separate for us the date into months and days. But I don't want to use days. I don't want to use the date. I just want to use the months. And as you can check here through the pivot table, we have a lot of information. March, February, and a specific date. As I would just want to keep the months, I can read it off the others informations, such as the date and also the days. And as we can see here, we only have now the months. And here we can see the total sold per month. Yeah, okay, it's correct. Let me select the column F and G, and in between one column and another, I'm gonna click, hold, and drag to the right, because that way I can make sure I can increase evenly the size of those both columns. Now let me select the second pivot table, Control C, and underneath this fourth one, Control V to paste. This one now I want to read it off the product, and again I want to check each one of the months. But instead of taking again the date, if you take a look here down below, you have the months. So let's take here the months, click, hold, and drag, and drop here in the rows field. Okay, and as you can see, we already have the average of the margin. So we're basically done with those pivot tables. You can actually also click here to close this panel. And yeah, but let's say you just close it, the right panel. How can you open it again? You need to click in a pivot table, and then you need to go to pivot table analyze, and then here to the right, field list. Okay, simple as that. So let's close it for the second time. Okay. In order to be able to create the dashboard, I think it's very important to make just 2 more things here. The first one is to add, let's say, the dynamic filters or the slicer, that is the buttons that we have in the dashboard, that whenever we click in the buttons, all the dashboard is going to be automatically updated for us. So this is the slicer. And to add a slicer here in Excel, I need to click in any pivot table that I have, and then pivot table analyze. Here I have insert slicer. I can select any different option that I have, but I think I want to stick with the brand to see all the different branches of the company. So let's click OK. And yeah, oh sorry, it's not the brand. So okay, I just insert a wrong slicer. How can I read it off this slicer? Right click in this slicer and then remove brand. Let's do it again, now the correct way. So pivot table analyze, insert slicer, and the information that I want is here, store. Okay, so store. Just select and mark this option. Okay, and yeah, now it's correct. I have here a lot of different branches, branch 1, 2, 3, and 4, and as you can see, it's automatically change the pivot table. If I click here in the branch 2, the data is going to automatically change. But if I click, let's say, in any different option, as you can see, just one pivot table is being automatically updated. This happened because I actually need to connect the slicer with all the reports or all the pivot tables that I have. And to do it, let's right click in this pivot table and go to, in this slicer, sorry, right click, report connections. Here I want to mark to check all those different pivot tables. And then I click OK. Now everything is connected, as you can see. The second thing that I want to do here before we go to dashboard, just let me move this slicer to the side. And the second pivot table that I have is going to be used as the cards. As we saw in the beginning of the video, we're going to have a lot of different cards into the dashboard that is going to show the percentage of each one of the products that we're going to have, okay? So those cards are going to be connected with this second pivot table, but the problem is I can't connect directly the cards with this pivot table. So I need to extract off to the side the data that I have within this specific pivot table. So how can I extract off to the side those informations? Just click in the next cell, the next column, and then equal sign within the cell, equal sign, and select the first information. Don't need to select the headers, okay? Because we are not going to use the headers. Just select the first data, the first product that you have, and then press enter. Okay, let me come back here to the first cell. In the down right corner of the cell, you click, hold, and drag down to make sure all the rows contain basically the same simple formula. As everything now is selected, Ctrl+C to copy everything. To the right, Ctrl+V. Okay, now we extract to the side all the data. Let me select all the values, home, and put everything in percentage again, and also increase to 2 decimal places to have more preciseness. And let me select the column C and increase the width of the column C just a little bit, and the D I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller like this. Okay, now I think we're done here with the pivot tables. We can move on to the dashboard. So let me click in this plus sign to add a new sheet, right click here, and then go to rename. This one is gonna be the dashboard. So dashboard. Here in the dashboard, I want to start with change the size, the width of the columns, because change the width of the column is gonna help us to properly place the areas of the charts and of all the shapes that we need to use here in the dashboard. So I want to start with the column A. I'm gonna click in the column A, right click here, and then column width. This one is gonna be equal to 2, and then OK. As you can see now, the column A is much smaller than in comparison to the others. I want to do this again, but this time to the column F, and I'm gonna press and hold the Control key to make sure I can select multiple columns at the same time. Okay, I want to use the K column to coupled with the column P, and together with the column U, and with the column Z. Okay, like this. Now that all those columns are selected together at the same time, let's click with the right click. Okay, it's very important. Right click in the column F or in any other selected column, and column width. Here, instead of using 8, I'm gonna use 2 as we saw before. Just enter, and we're done with this arrangement of the size of those columns. Now let's do something different here, that is to add the cards that we're gonna use. So the first card can be here in this area, and I want to use the column F, K, and P, and on to separate the shapes that we're gonna use. Okay, so insert shapes, and then I want to use rectangle. Click here, or you can use actually any different shapes that you want to use. If you want to use a circle or a triangle, you can do so. Let me click, hold, and drag to create the area of this rectangle like this. As the first rectangle done here, instead of move on to the second, Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, maybe we can do something better. Let me click here in this formula bar, And within the formula bar, equal sign, and then I'm gonna go back to the pivot tables, and I want to select the first percentage that I have to the side of the pivot table. Okay, you can't select the data, the value that you have within the pivot table. So as we did before, you need to select the data that is outside. Enter. Okay, now we already have here the percentage. Before we move on and change the layout, the design, let's keep doing the cards. So let me press now two different keys. That is the Control key and the Shift key. Press and hold both together, and then click in this shape. Click, hold, and drag to the side. Okay, like this. Okay, the second one is gonna be here, and let's create one more like this. One more, and the last one. Okay. Now it's much easier to change. So let's click here in the second card that we have. Instead of using this cell D12, we're gonna use D13 to move to the next row and to take the next percentage. D13, enter. The next one, D14. The fourth one is gonna be 15, and then the last one is gonna be 16. Okay. Now that we almost done here with the cards, let's take again one card here, but this time Control C, Control V to copy and paste. This one I'm gonna move up. Now I'm gonna make it maybe smaller using just the row 2 and 3 like this. Instead of using now the cell D12, I want to use the preview cell, that is the C12, enter, to take the product name. Because if you check here in the pivot tables, in the column D, we have the percentage. And let's say in the previous column, we have the name of the product. So this is why I just changed the D to the C, okay? And now let me Control Shift and move it to the right, Control Shift and move again to the right. Basically, we are doing the same step, but this time with the name of the product. The second one is gonna be C13. This one is gonna be 14. This one is gonna be 15. And the last one, of course, 16. Okay. With those cards done, of course, it's not 100% done because we need to change the layout and the design. I know that, but okay, it's almost there. Let's go back to the pivot tables and take this slicer here. Click the slicer, and then you can right click, cut to take the slicer, go to the dashboard, and maybe in this cell right here, B8, right click and paste the slicer. We can make it a little bit bigger like this, and we can make it a little bit smaller, moving it up, maybe here. Okay. Some change that I want to do here in the slicer is I want to read it off the header. So right click here and then go to slicer settings, and I want to read it off the title. So just click here, display header. Okay. And yeah, as you can see, it's much clearer. Now again, with the slicer selected, I want to split, to separate. Instead of using just one single column for each one of the options, I want to create two different columns. Go to slicer and columns equal to 2. Okay, like this. Now, as you can see here, the options are maybe too thin. We can make it, let's say, thicker. And to do it, let's go again here to the slicer, and the height I can increase maybe 0.8. Yeah, perfect. 0.8. But of course, you can use any height that fits better to your computer screen. Now it's time to create the charts that we're gonna use. So let's go back to the pivot tables, and we're gonna create the charts from the pivot tables. The first chart that I want to start with is using the first pivot table. Just click in the pivot table, and as we have here the products and the values, basically we are comparing against each other each one of the products. And that way I can see what is the product that sold the most and what is the product that sold the least. So we can use many different charts, such as the pie chart or the donut chart or the bar chart, the column chart. You can choose your own chart. Here, I think it's gonna look very good, maybe the bar chart, because the bar chart, we can put the largest value in the top, the smallest one in the bottom. That way we can create maybe a top 10, top 5, top to any chart in Excel, okay? Using the largest value to the smallest one. But as we can see here, we need to reorganize the data because the largest value is in the second row. And let's say the smallest one is not in the last row. So I want to click here in this filter and go to more sort options. And I want to sort in A to Z. And I want to use sum of total price. Okay. And of course, I know that it's in the opposite here, that as I said before, the smallest one is in the top, the largest one is in the bottom. Okay, I know, but when we create the bar chart is going to invert those values. So take a look here, insert, column chart, and then bar chart. As you can see, the bar chart is correct. The largest value is in the top, and the smallest one is in the bottom. Let's take this chart and move it to the right like this. This one here we have, let's change the title, total sold per product. Okay. The second chart, let's skip the second pivot table because we are using the data in the cards. Okay, so it makes no sense create again a second visualization to this data. Let's go to the third one where we have the states and the addition of the total sold for each one of the states. And again, I'm thinking we can use here a bar chart. Insert and use here a bar chart. And as you can see, we need to sort the informations to make it better to see. So again, in the filters, more sort options, A to Z, sum of total price. Let me click here, OK. And as you can see now, it's better. The title I'm going to change to total sold per state. Okay. The fourth chart, the third chart that we can use. And now we can do something different because as we have the months, and I don't want to sort using the total price as the criteria. I want to keep January, February, March, April, and on and on. I can't change those values. So in order to keep the values and in the same way make analysis here in Excel, I think it's a chart that can help us a lot here is maybe the column chart or also the line chart or the area chart. I want to keep with the area chart. So insert line, but I'm gonna choose area like this. This chart is gonna has the name total sold per state. No, sorry, per month. Yeah, okay. Total sold per month. Yes, it's correct. Now the last chart, the fourth one is, again, we can use an area chart, but this time instead of having here the total sold, we have the margin for each one of the months. So insert and then area chart like this. This one is gonna be total or average margin per month. Average margin per month. Yes, it's correct. Now that we did here all the charts that we gonna use in the dashboard, it's very important. Be mindful to click in the flop disk and the diskette to save your spreadsheet. Let's move all those charts to the dashboard. So once you click in the first chart, doesn't matter what chart you click first, and then I'm gonna press and hold the Control key, select the second one, the third one, and fourth one. Okay. I want to use a different shortcut now. Control X to cut everything. Then I go to the dashboard, clicking any cell like this one right here, Control V to paste everything. Now we can move the charts and reorganize in the dashboard area. The total sold per product, I want to move down here and like this. Okay. I know that we can't properly see the data, but we're gonna change it later. Okay, we're gonna change the design, the layout of the chart. This second one, I want to move it here and bring it down like maybe like this. If you have difficult to change the position of the chart, maybe you can use the arrow keys. That way you can have more preciseness to move the chart around, okay? To move it around. Let's select here the total sold per month, put it here, and bring it to the right like this, bring a little bit up. The last chart I'm gonna display here, down here, maybe, okay. Bring it to the right. Yeah, I think it's good. Maybe something that I want to change here. I want to use the row 37. So I'm gonna move it just run row down all those charts like this. Before we change the layout and the design of the things that we have here, I think we can first change the background color. So let's select the entire background like this. And then I can go to the fill and select a blue color, maybe this one right here. Talking about the layout and design, we can start with the cards. So I want to select the first one, and maybe I can align here to the bottom, the percentage, and also to the right. And I want to increase, maybe using the 36 as the font size. I want to put everything in bold and change it to the white color like this. Now the product where I have creatine, I want to use bold again, 16 as the size, and I want to organize in the middle and move it to the left like this. And I change the font color to white. Okay. Now let's click again in the rectangle that I have, the largest one. Right click and go to Format Shape. Here to the right we can make some changes, such as using effects and use the first shadow option. Okay. And as the fill line, I want to choose a line, and solid line, I want to use a white one, like this. Now I can move on to fill, and I choose gradient fill. Here we're gonna have maybe many different options to use as the gradients, or you can also change here, maybe a yellow one, a greenish one. But the thing is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what type of gradient that you have here, because you're gonna select one gradient and you're gonna delete everything. You're just gonna keep with two different gradient stops. The one to the left, you want to move to 70%. Okay, so click here in this gradient in the middle, and as the position, you want to use 70%. As the color, choose white. Transparency, I want to use 100%. The one to the right now is gonna be equal to white again, but this time the transparency is equal to 70%. And the last thing that I want to change here is the type. Instead of using linear, I want to use radial, okay? And direction, I want to use one that is from center, maybe the one in the middle here, because we're gonna have this style. I'm gonna click where I have the product, and this time I'm gonna go to shape format, and I want to choose shape fill, no fill, shape outline, no outline, because that way we can make it transparent like this. And how can I apply this same design as I did here to all the different cards that I have? It's just easy to do. So click in the card, double click in the format painter, 1, 2, and then just click in all the different cards that you have like this. Now I want to do the same thing for the products. So let me click here in the one that we already did. Just click again in the format painter 2 times, 1, 2, and then just click over all the cards that we have. Okay, so we're done with the cards. Much better than it was before, right? And if we click here in the slicers, as you can see, everything in the dashboard is going to be automatically updated for us. Now let's move down here to the slicer itself, and let's change the design of the slicer. As we can see here, the option that is selected is highlighted with this blue color. And the one that we are just hover over with the mouse, with the cursor, is being highlighted with this yellowish color. We can change those settings. If you click in the slicer, you can go to slicer and choose different options of slicer, such as an orange one, a yellow one, and on and on. But I think it's not gonna match with the dashboard. So I think it's better to change the layout and design manually, or to customize the design. So let's click again in the slicer, and you go to slicer, click in this down arrow, quick styles. Now you're gonna choose this option right here, new slicer style. Okay, so click in this option. So this is the window that we're gonna have. And the first thing that we can start with is change the name. Mine is new slicer, but you can use whatever the name you want to use. Let's start now with the slicer elements, choosing the first option, whole slicer, format, and here I want to start with font. As the font, I want to use bold and 14, and the color in the font, I want to use a white one. Now I can move on to border, but I will not change anything here, and I go to fill. Okay, As the fill, I want to choose the same color as we did to the background, this blue right here, okay? Just something to be mindful here. Go back to the border. Make sure there is no border in this visualization here. So click here, none, okay? Clicking none. And then okay. And yeah, the first one is done. Let's move on to selected item with data. Click here. This option is responsible to, whenever you selected an option in the slicer, it's going to be automatically highlighted for you. So this highlight is what you are setting here, okay? Let's stick with bold. The size, I'm not changing the size. I'm going to keep the same as before. The color, I want to use white one. Border, now I need to change here. Let's stick with this thicker one. Click here, select the black color, and make sure you click outline. And then fill, I want to use this type of blue, but as I ain't got any type of blue that I like here, I'll need to click more colors and choose my own custom color. You can create your own color, or you can choose here in the standard. Yes, I'm gonna choose this blue right here. Okay, okay. And now this third thing that I want to change is hovered selected item with data. Format, I want to use this yellow color as the fill. In the border, I want to use the same setting as before. And as the font, italic, and 9 as the size, okay? And the color, I want to use a black one. Okay. Now the last option, settings, that we're going to change is hovered unselected item with data. Format, and again, italic, 9, color, black, border, the same as before, bold, black, and outline, fill, the same yellow. Okay, this one right here. Okay, okay, so we're done. But I already done with the settings. So why can't I see the settings here in the slicer? Because you need to click again in the slicer, in this down arrow, and then choose your slicer like this. Okay, so this is our slicer. As we can see, I think, at least it's my opinion, it's much better than before. So whenever we choose an option, it's going to be automatically highlighted with this thick and this thick border outline, and also with the blue color within the selection. And whenever we hover over with the cursor, it's going to be highlighted with a yellowish color. Now we can move on to the charts. We can start with reading off these gray options that we have here, this gray button. Basically, this button here is a filter in the charts. I can choose anything that I want to see, and that way the chart is going to filter this information for me. But I don't think it's important to have the filter here in the chart, as we already have the slicer, okay? And the slicer is working properly. So click in the chart and then go to Pivot Chart Analyze, Field Buttons. Just click here to read it off this information. I'm going to do this for all those charts that I have, okay? To read it off this information. Now the area chart, let's click in the area chart. To make it faster to customize the chart, there is a style that I like a lot here, that is in design. Click in the style arrow, and I think this style 10, yeah, this one right here, just click here. Now to the second area chart, I'm going to do basically the same thing, so the same design. Of course, we're going to change something, a couple of options here. Let's start with selecting the legend. To the right here, the total, click and delete. And again here, down below, just read it off this information. Let's click in the header here and the title of the chart. And I want to make sure the size is equal to 12. This one here is going to be equal to 12 too, like this. Now move on here to the bar charts. I can do something similar. The title is going to be equal to 12. This one too. Okay. I can read it off the total, that is the legend that I have. This one too. And these read lines, I can also read it off them like this. And also the values that I have in the bottom position here underneath the chart like this. Now let me select again the first bar chart, and as I deleted the values that we had, I don't know anymore how much the first product represents, or the first bar, the second one, the third one. Of course, we have the size, and we can compare the size of the bars. But I think it's also important to have the values, because the value gives more preciseness. So with the chart selected, I can go to Design, to the left, Add Chart Element, and here I want to stick with data labels, outside, inside base, like this. The same thing I'm gonna do to the second chart, data labels, inside base. Now move on again to the area chart. Let's click maybe in the area of the chart, right click here, format chart area. As the field, I want to select the gradient field, and as we did this gradient field before to the cards, Excel saved the settings here, and it's automatically just input the same settings as before. But maybe you need to do it again, so you can use the same settings as we used before to the cards. As the border, I want to use solid line, and as the effects, I want to use a shadow. Okay, now let's click within the area, the chart, and then go to View and Line, Border, Solid Line. Okay, now let's move on to the second area chart. Let's click in the overall area of the chart and go to Solid Line, View, Gradient View, Effects, Shadow, the first option, and now click within the chart, the area of the chart, and go to, again, View and Line, Border, Solid Line. You can close this right panel, and as you can see, we are already done with the area chart. Now these last two charts that we have, the bars ones, we can still make some changes here. So let's say select the area of the first one, right click, and go to Format Chart Area. And here to the right, we can choose Effects, the first option of Shadow. And again, go to View and Line, Border, Solid Line, View, Gradient View, like this. Before we move on and change the bars itself, let's apply the same settings to the second bar chart here. So Gradient View, Border, Solid Line, Effects, and the first option of Shadow. Okay, now let's move on, go back to the first chart, and I'll put everything here in bold, change the font to white, like this, and apply the same settings to the second bar chart, like this. Now I want to select the bar itself, right click, Format Data Series, and here we can maybe change the gap width to 100, or even lower, maybe 70. This is gonna make our bar thicker. So now let's click again in the Effects, Shadow, View and Line, Gradient View, and Border, Solid Line, like this. Now I want to click within the bar, or in other words, in the number, in the value, and I want to go to Size and Properties, Alignment, Resize Shape, and also allow text to overflow shape. And I want to read it off this option, Wrap Text in Shape, okay, like this. Now, basically, we're gonna apply the same settings to the second chart that we have here, the bar one. Let's start with the values. So, resize and wrap, okay? Now go to the bar itself. The gap width, this time I'm gonna have 70. Yeah, I think it's look good, but maybe let's increase it a bit, 80%, yes. I'm gonna change the shadow to use shadows. And the fill, gradient fill, border, solid line. Let me close this panel and we're done. So this is our dashboard here in Excel. Whenever we click here in any option in the slicer, as you can see, the dashboard is going to be automatically updated for us. So this is how we can create a dashboard in Excel, starting from a data set and then transform into a table and then move on to the pivot tables and then create the dashboard itself. I hope you guys, this video can help you a lot. And with the charts, the cards, the slicer that we have, we can make many different analyses here in Excel. So I'm gonna show you a couple of analyses that we can see here. The first one, as we have here, the total sold per month, and also underneath the average margin per month, we can see if there is some correlation between those values. So this is the first analysis that we can have here. And of course, we can see individually each one of the charts, like the total sold per month, and we can see the evolution of the values of the sales. And we can also go to the average margin per month and see the evolution of the margin, if it's good or if it's not. The total sold per state, we can see the state that are sold the most and the one that is sold the least. And we can also see the same information, but instead of using the states, we are using the products as the criteria. And with the slicer, we can see different stores. So as I have the branch 1, or the store 1, the store 2, 3, and 4, I can have the slicer to help me with that. And with the cards, we can see the average of the margin of each one of the items that I sold here in this report. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or any suggestions to the next videos, let me know, comment down below, and I see you tomorrow. As every day has a new video, I see you there.